The religious love to claim that atheists can't answer their questions or can't measure up to their standards or whatever, but we always can. They just don't like what we have to say. But then again, they're terrified of the facts, right? They'd rather live in a childish happy land in their heads, but that's not what's going on in reality, and only reality matters. So let's go prove it once again. We're going to do a video off of Pastor Benjamin Fagan's channel called 4 Tests Atheism Can't Pass. And as will be no surprise whatsoever, the pastor is probably going to screw it all up, as all of them do. How can these people make fools of themselves as badly as they do time after time after time and still have a job? Because their followers are every bit as dumb as they are. But hey, don't take my word for it. Let's go check out these tests for ourselves, because I don't think we're going to be at all impressed.
Imagine living in a world without ultimate meaning, where morality is just a social construct and the origin of everything you see is left to chance.
So, you mean reality, right? Granted, people like Pastor Ben here, they don't really like that, but too bad. Reality is what it is, whether you find any personal joy in it or not. Because we don't have to imagine that world. We live in it every single day. But some people, they don't like that fact. They'd rather live in a different kind of world, and lacking that, they just make stuff up in their heads because it makes them feel better. Oh yeah, and it makes them money. Can't forget that. That's where we get religion, and religion is complete bullshit. Nobody cares what you want to be true. We care what is actually true, and sadly for the religious, they're on the losing side of that argument. So let's continue.
It sounds bleak, right? But what if I told you that atheism, which is the belief that there is no God, fails 4 essential tests of truth?
And he's wrong, right off the bat. Big surprise there. Because these people have very clearly never talked to any actual atheists. It's all make-believe. Now, before we get going, I want to make a prediction. All of his supposed tests are going to be predicated on his existing religious beliefs, not on anything that can be objectively demonstrated in reality. Let's see if I'm right. Because I see videos like this all the time. I might not do them all, but it is ridiculously common to see the religious just pretending that because they believe it, it's just got to be true, so there. They've got a goal in mind going in, and damn it, they're going to reach that goal no matter how many knots they have to tie themselves into in order to get there. You know, because fee-fees. So let's just see how ridiculous this gets, and I'm betting it'll be pretty high up the scale, but I guess we'll have to see.
In this video, we're going to uncover those 4 tests and show how atheism collapses under scrutiny.
Says the guy who doesn't even know what atheism is. That cannot be stated clearly enough. When you don't even understand your opposition, how can you possibly be rationally critical of them? Oh, right, they're not rational. It's just, here's the stuff that I believe uncritically on faith, and if you don't agree with me, you're wrong. That's all the religious ever do, and it is never, ever, ever impressive. So if that's all he's going to do, and I figure it is, then this whole thing is going to collapse into a heap of irrationality and absurdity along the way. And that's why they're never ever talking to us. It's just a mutual masturbation society, as if that's any surprise. So can we please get to your tests, Pastor? Because I really need a good laugh.
And reveal a worldview that truly satisfies both heart and mind. Stick around to the end to discover the truth that offers real hope and meaning.
Atheism isn't a worldview. The only thing Ben is doing is proving just how ignorant he is. Not that he cares, because the idiots in the pews that he's trying to appeal to, they don't know, and lying for the Lord is a time-honored religious tradition, right? The only thing that matters are the facts, and I feel confident that the good pastor has none of those, but hey, I'm willing to be proven wrong. So let's see what he's got.
By the way, don't forget, if you like my analysis of atheism, please like this video, subscribe to this channel, and share this video so people can accept Jesus as their Lord and Savior.
And this seems like a good time to bring up that this video, at least at the time I'm writing this, has 21 upvotes and 173 downvotes. He's got 12.6 thousand subscribers and only 1.5 thousand views. So this tracks with what we've come to expect from the religious. They're getting no support whatsoever from their own side. People just subscribe out of a sense of obligation, and then they never view the content at all. They don't engage with it whatsoever, and that's not a good thing. That's why these religious channels spent so much time getting entirely trashed. Because they deserve it. Anyhow, can we please get to the tests now? Because that would sure be nice.
And this is what this channel is about. It's about defending the faith that was once delivered to the saints, uplifting Jesus, and preparing a people ready for his soon return. Jesus is coming again. Let's get into atheism. Let's break it down.
Hammer time! But you can see where he's coming from, right? He's a con man for the Lord, and he's just trying to push his particular grift so that people give him money. This also seems like a good time to take a look a little deeper into the channel. And of course, he's got a shop where he sells t-shirts and hoodies and encourages people to give money to his channel. So he's doing exactly what I'd expect him to do as a grifter for God. How about sharing your faith for free, Pastor? No? Didn't think so. Because this is always about making a buck, isn't it? Big surprise there.
When evaluating any worldview, including atheism
Still isn't a worldview, sorry. When evaluating any of these con men preachers, including Pastor Ben, I can start off with that too, but at least I know enough about the subject matter to not be making a fool of myself. He kind of strikes me like the flat earthers do. Not saying that he is one, I have no idea on that. Just that he reminds me of one, because they're out there pushing a narrative that they never reached rationally because they really want it to be true. That's why after the recent, in some big air quotes, because by the time this hits the channel it won't really be recent anymore, but indulge me for a second. But I knew before the whole final experiment happened that the flat earthers were going to chicken out in the end. They can't admit that they were wrong all along. Now they're back trying to reformulate their flat earth beliefs, because this was never about the truth in the first place. It's about their childish fifis and faith. It's too bad that the people on the rational side didn't understand that, because they could have saved a whole lot of time and money dragging these fucking morons down to Antarctica, couldn't they? It was never going to convince the lunatics. So why did they bother in the first place? I will never understand that.
It must pass 4 critical apologetics tests. The first is correspondence. Second, consistency. Next, comprehensiveness. And then practical application.
We'll wait until he gets to the explanation, because none of that meant anything by just listing terms. I just object to the idea that we have to pass his stupid tests. I am not convinced that he's worthwhile to begin with. Because again, he's just preaching to the choir, and he doesn't much care what atheists have to say, right? So let's scroll down into the comments and see what's going on there. And as expected, he's just getting trashed by atheists, and Ben isn't responding to his detractors at all. In fact, I scrolled through, and I couldn't find a single place that he responded to anyone. That just proves what an absolute joke Ben actually is. Whereas I respond to virtually every comment, at least the ones that deserve it. There are a few that I don't, but most of them I do. And that's really why I do this at all, to have those conversations and to get to the actual truth. Ben is doing what you'd expect a preacher to do in a religion that is designed to be top down. He's preaching to the choir, and he couldn't care less about what anybody has to say in response, because that's not how religion works. It's one way, not bidirectional. So he's doing precisely what we expect him to do, as if that's any surprise. Yeah. Keep going, Ben. You're just proving what an idiot you are, and we're not surprised by that either.
These tests reveal whether a worldview aligns with reality, avoids contradictions, and explains life's big questions, and works in daily life. But does atheism pass these tests? Let's find out.
That gives me an idea. How about we examine Christianity in light of his questions? I mean, he's just going to make shit up about atheism since he's already demonstrated that he doesn't understand it at all and doesn't care, but I'll tell the truth, at least from my own perspective, since with 45,000 plus distinct sects of Christianity, it's pretty hard to do them all justice, but let's try and see if his side passes. Ben is a Seventh-day Adventist, at least according to his description, so we'll see where this goes. Most Christians don't even think that he's a Christian to begin with. Let's keep that in mind and continue onward.
The correspondence test asks this: does this worldview match the observable world?
And in the case of atheism, since atheism only addresses belief in the existence of gods, and there's no evidence that any gods exist, the answer is clearly yes. For Christianity, the answer is clearly no, since there is no evidence for any gods, his or any other. Because there is no evidence, I do not believe. He believes entirely without evidence, based on blind faith and wishful thinking. And that's not something to be proud of. So, right now, Christianity 0, atheism 1. Let's keep going.
Atheism claims the universe emerged from nothing without a cause.
No, it doesn't. Atheism doesn't claim anything because atheism makes no claims. Atheism is the answer to one and only one question, and Ben is either an idiot or lying, perhaps both. Dumb or dishonest is always how we need to evaluate these people because they're always one or the other, or both. Atheism has nothing at all to say about the origin of the universe. He is desperately trying to make us just like he is. And we're not. Atheism isn't a religion. Atheism is just not being convinced on the God proposition. So Ben is an imbecile, as if that's any surprise. Luckily, the people in his comments are holding him accountable for his lies, and he's just running and hiding as we've come to expect. Then he'll just repeat the same old lies over and over again verbatim because he doesn't care at all about the truth. Now, we'll get to the something from nothing bit in a second. I just want to give him more time to hang himself, but he fundamentally doesn't understand atheism one bit. In fact, I don't think he understands much of anything, and I could have called that one in my sleep.
Yet the observable world shows us that everything with a beginning must have a cause.
And most modern cosmology does suggest that there was a cause of sorts. It's just not what he wants it to be. We have no clue what might have set off the Big Bang, and neither does Ben. He just really likes the idea of an imaginary friend in the sky, so he shoves one in there irrationally. Because you notice the language that he's using there, right? Things that began to exist and all that. We have no evidence that there's ever been anything that didn't begin to exist at some point. And also that nothing really begins to exist, because it's all just a rearrangement of pre-existing stuff. So he's doubly wrong here, which is, again, not at all surprising. Also, he's just projecting because it's the position of the religious that something came from nothing. He believes that his imaginary friend just zippity-doo-dah'd everything out of nowhere. Then he tries to push his ridiculous bullshit on us. And you wonder why we call these people dishonest. Because they are.
The Bible says in Hebrews chapter 3 verse 4, "For every house is builded by some man, but he that built all things is God."
First off, nobody cares about your stupid book. My book says a thing doesn't impress anyone. Secondly, builded. This, of course, is just King James bullshit, and I had to go look it up in the New World Translation since that's a lot more common among Jehovah's Witnesses. But there, the word used is constructed, not builded. So far as I can tell, that only appears in the KJV and was fixed in the new KJV version where they used built. Now, this doesn't really matter. It's just an interesting tidbit of information, but it's really important to pay attention to the words that they use, and this is just good practice. So no, Ben, builded isn't a word. Your IQ just took a couple of extra point dip. Try being better because this is just ridiculous.
How can atheism explain this foundational principle of causality? Atheists argue that life exists by chance, but scientists have shown that the universe's constants like gravity, electromagnetism, and others are fine-tuned for life.
It shows nothing at all of the sort. This is interpretation, not fact, and since the religious care only about their own comforting interpretations, they're really just making fools of themselves, right? They cannot accept that life evolved to fit the conditions that existed on this planet, not the other way around. They have a fundamental misunderstanding of the real world because their religion insists that they must. That's why you have to start with the facts, not the faith, and they insist on starting with the faith and just ignoring the facts altogether. Where they are barely aware of the facts, they try to wrestle them into alignment with their faith instead of just jettisoning the faith altogether because it makes no sense with regard to the actual facts. Or, they just lie about it. That's pretty popular too. So let's just be honest and call Ben a dishonest prick because I don't think that's unreasonable at this point. This guy has no idea what the hell he's talking about. And that's not exactly a surprise, is it?
Chance doesn't correspond to such precision.
There is no precision. You can't have precision the way it worked out. The universe is the way that it is. We don't know why it is like it is. For all we know, it couldn't have been any other way. But had it been different, and of course we can't know if it could have been, but if it had been, then we wouldn't be here to debate the issue. Another form of life might be, we don't know, or no life could be, and then there would be no debate at all. But Ben is really addicted to the belief that humans were intended from the start, and that's the only way that he can possibly look at it. That doesn't make it true, though, and because he cares more about his feelings than he does about the facts, he can't take all of those important steps backwards and evaluate it without his childish preconceptions getting in the way. Because he doesn't care, and that's the problem. Ignorance isn't pretty, but it's all they've got.
Isn't design a more logical conclusion?
No, just no. It can't be logical until you demonstrate that first, there is design, and second, that there is a designer. You have not justified either of those preconceptions. These are things they just really want to be true. But wanting doesn't mean a damn thing until you can prove that it's true. And he's not even trying to do that, you notice, beyond my book says a thing, and nobody cares about your stupid book until you can prove that that's true too. This is why faith means absolutely nothing. What you really wish was true is irrelevant. You need to have the demonstrable evidence on your side, and the religious simply don't. They just look like morons every time they open their mouths, because they're not after actual truth. They only want emotional comfort. And that is positively childish.
If atheism can't explain the origin and order of the universe, is it really aligned with reality?
Projecting much? This too is one of the many places that they go wrong, and they're so far out in the wrongness weeds that I doubt they can see anything else from there. He can't justify his own position at all, and he's not even trying. He's just asserting things without being able to prove them, without being able to back them up with evidence at all. He's doing all of the things that he's accusing atheism of doing because he doesn't have a rational commitment to the truth like a lot of atheists do, like I do at least, since I only get to speak for myself. I don't care what makes you happy. I don't care what makes me happy. I certainly don't care about my book says a thing. I care what objective evidence can be presented in support of a particular idea, and your faith and your fifis mean nothing at all. So he fails his own first test miserably because Christianity does not remotely appear to work in the real world. Unless you take all of the irrational beliefs a priori on faith, and that's just stupid. In fact, he really fails twice because he doesn't even know what he's talking about when it comes to atheism. Atheism is not what he pretends that it is. Call that ignorance or dishonesty, it doesn't really matter. It's still not what he's inventing out of whole cloth, but the religious do this all the time, right? Atheism becomes that made-up boogeyman that they use to scare their followers because it doesn't agree with the fundamental basics of Christianity or other religions, what they want to believe was true. They're not, certainly not evidentially justifiable, but since when did they care about any of that? And the answer is never, not even close. So we're going to stop right here for the day. We only got to one test, but it was as laughable as I figured, and I don't think the rest are going to be any better. At least that's what I'm predicting. He's got a timeline set up, and the tests themselves don't look very long individually, but he had a long intro, and he has an even longer outro, so next time we might finish up all of his tests and then just have a video on his conclusion. I don't know. I hope it's worth it. Although, based on past experience, I kind of doubt it, don't you? I honestly can't believe just how dumb these people really are. Dumb or dishonest, or both. They are so positively brainwashed into their beliefs that they can't even imagine that they could be wrong about any of it, or all of it. Not that they care. Because this is all about comfort, not a rational grasp on the real world. They are terrified of the real world. They want nothing to do with the real world because it's scary. But that's not how adults operate, is it? That's why these are just irrational, immature children living in adult bodies. And that's pathetically sad. So what do you think of his first test? Could he have failed any worse if he tried? Let me know down below. Sadly, I think that this is the best that the religious can actually do, and that's positively pathetic as well. I mean, how can you fail this badly all the time and not be aware of it? How can you have this pointed out to you all the time, like he does in his comments that he's ignoring, and not be aware? Because they just don't care. If you can come up with something sadder than that, let me know down in the comments because I'm positively at a loss. So you think about that, and I'll see you all next time. The religious love to make claims that are never ever rationally justified, but they don't care about the justification at all, do they? At least, not so far. I'd love to see one give it a try, but it's been fail all the way down for many years, and I wouldn't be holding my breath for this to get any better. Maybe worse. Almost certainly worse. So let's go see. Here we go again with part 2 of Pastor Benjamin Fagan's 4 tests that atheists can't pass. Today we'll get through 2, and they'll both be about as dumb as the first one was, at least I'm predicting. You never really know with these people, but my magic 8-ball says signs point to yes. So let's get into it, because that's kind of what we do around here, right? Try to glean truth from bullshit. It would be nice if the religious ever had anything other than bullshit, but so far, no go. Let's go see if this is the exception to the rule, okay?
Consistency asks, does this worldview contradict itself?
It's still not a worldview. This is yet again one of the many problems with the religious, because they can't figure out that we're not just like they are. Atheism isn't a worldview. It never has been, and it never will be. It is the answer to one and only one question. Do you believe in any gods? If the answer is no, then you're an atheist. There is nothing else required to be an atheist. You can have whatever worldviews you might happen to like, and I still don't think that I have one in the sense that the religious talk about. My entire view of the world is, hey, there it is, let's try to figure it out. I follow the evidence to its most logical, rational conclusion, and that's it. I am not putting any desires into it. The world is whatever it seems to be, and that's not really a worldview. It's just accepting your surroundings as they are. But hey, let's continue.
Atheism, or atheists, often say morality is subjective.
Because it is. He says this like he's surprised by it, but demonstrably, that's what morality is now and always has been. Welcome to the real world. Because this is something the religious, they seem to have a real problem with it, right? They have an idea in their heads what they want the world to be, and if the world isn't actually like that, well, they'll just lie to themselves and others, and it's just, that's what it's like regardless. And that is just stupid. Again, follow the evidence and stop pretending that your wishes and your dreams have anything at all to do with it. Your feelings don't matter. Grow the hell up.
Shaped by evolution or society. But then, why do atheists also claim things like murder or oppression or are basically objectively wrong?
Nobody does. This is just you putting your expectations on others, and that's really dumb. Murder is wrong because society says that murder is wrong. That's all there is to it. If there was a society out there that didn't say that murder was wrong or didn't punish murder, anything like that, that society wouldn't last for long, would it? And in fact, there have been societies where that was true to some degree or another, and those societies were not very stable. So, for the good of the society, for the good of the people in the society, murder pretty much has to be wrong, or at least in extreme cases, because otherwise you don't have a workable society. There is no objectivity to it whatsoever. It's not wrong because it's wrong. It's wrong because otherwise you don't have people to make any moral judgments at all. Stop making a fool of yourself. It's not a good look.
Romans 2:15 explains it perfectly. Explains the issue perfectly.
Nobody gives a damn what your stupid book says. This again proves that this video isn't being made for atheists. So we're going to fast forward through that because the rampant dishonesty here is just absurd. If you can't speak honestly, understanding what your supposed target audience thinks, then you're just wasting everyone's time. So let's get past this and see if we can't find his second test, because this is just getting ridiculous.
Morality points to a moral lawgiver, God.
It does nothing at all of the sort. You just really like the idea, but that doesn't mean that one exists. That's where you'd need evidence, and let's be honest, they never have any of that. They don't even pretend. They don't even know what these words mean. I keep seeing these religious numbnuts showing up in atheist subreddits and forums demanding that we believe what they do, and the second that we say otherwise, they run away with their tails tucked between their legs because they can't even handle the possibility that they're wrong. Saw it again this morning, in fact. I even see these lunatics arguing with atheists over what atheists believe. But you can't possibly mean that. Yes, we do, and please go fuck off. We are telling you the truth, and you need to learn how to deal. But they can't, can they? And how pathetic is that?
Who wrote the law in our hearts from the beginning? God created the sinless pair, Adam and Eve. The sinless pair, Adam and Eve. And they had the law of God written in their hearts, but they made the wrong decision.
You haven't understood your Bible, have you? That's theology, not reality. Granted, the Bible is a book of mythology to begin with, but he hasn't read or understood Genesis because he wouldn't be making the fool of himself that he is if he had. Not that he cares. This is just how he's choosing to interact with his book, putting the things that he really wants to be true first, and then just reinterpreting the Bible to fit, rather than reading the Bible as it is first and going where it leads. Granted, you shouldn't really do that either, since the Bible isn't demonstrably true, but he's just reinterpreting the Bible in light of his wishes and dreams, not the other way around, which is why these people are just doubly dumb. Can we please get to the second test already? Because I'll be honest, I'm starting to get bored.
You see, there is the moral principles that are ingrained in everyone.
That's what you keep saying, but you can't back it up. But I really like it doesn't mean anything. My book says a thing is just laughable. Yet he refuses to deal with reality any other way because he's terrified of reality. Reality isn't what he desperately wishes it could be. You can't go and talk to people who fundamentally disagree with your conclusions and pretend that, hey, they really agree, because that's what the religious are doing. They expect atheists to really believe what they believe, and we don't. And they can't figure that shit out. How sad is that?
And this is a point that there must be a creator who had done this work in us. Atheists argue that a good God would not allow evil. Yet in rejecting God, they're left with no standard for calling anything evil.
Because you don't understand what's going on at a fundamental level. You are so far out in the weeds that it's hardly worth having a conversation with you. And that's really my conclusion from thousands and thousands of interactions with the religious over the years. They honestly refuse to understand that everyone isn't just like they are. They are trying to stuff everyone else into their own little box, and it doesn't work that way. Well, how can you get to the same emotionally comforting conclusion that I did if you don't believe what I do? Yeah, keep trying. You might get it through your head one of these days. We do not accept much of anything that you do because your beliefs are based on feelings, not facts. We only care about the facts and not feelings. Never the two shall meet, I guess. That's why the religious spend so much time failing. Because they're dumb.
How can atheism condemn what it claims doesn't objectively exist?
Very easily. Because you don't need objectivity. Objectivity is meaningless in this regard. That just doesn't fit into your comforting little worldview, so you refuse to accept it. But that's still what's going on. That's why you can find a wide variety of moral views worldwide. Everyone is just kind of doing their own thing. If it works for them and their society, then they succeed. And if not, they fail. Welcome to the real world. Of course, they're looking for a comforting explanation for everything, and that simply isn't the way that it works out in the real world, is it? Life is messy. Life isn't fair. You have to get that through your head, or you look like an idiot, which, sadly, there's an awful lot of idiots out there, right? Only children kick and scream and cry because they don't get their way, but that's how the religious tend to operate. It doesn't make you look good. I'm sorry, it just doesn't. In fact, it makes you look the opposite. Don't be that dumb. It's not a good look.
If atheism is inconsistent with its own claims, can it really be trusted? So let's press on.
But atheism isn't inconsistent with its own claims, only with yours. You just want things to be the way that makes you happy, and that's not how this works. Granted, atheism doesn't make any claims at all. Atheism has nothing to do with morality at all. He clearly doesn't understand what he's talking about, which is hardly a surprise. Since I started writing these things, I've seen other atheist content creators roast this asshole, and while I have purposely not watched those videos, it's hard not to understand their reactions, at least from the thumbnails and from the titles. This guy is getting his ass handed to him by the very people that he's out there criticizing, because he's not really criticizing atheism at all. He has no clue what an atheist thinks because he's never actually talked to one. He's just making shit up for his already faithful audience, and that's why he's getting absolutely roasted from everywhere. This is not a surprise. This is how the overwhelming majority of religious apologists are, and they pretend, well, of course they're going to hate me because I'm right. No, we hate you because you're an asshole. You are ridiculously wrong, and everyone is pointing it out, but he's not going to stop, is he? Because he's a moron.
By the way, if you're enjoying this breakdown, check out my playlist, Challenging Skeptics and Infidels, on my channel. It's packed with videos answering tough questions about God, faith, and the Bible. I'm going to put the link to that in the description below.
No thanks. You're screwing up badly enough right here. You're one of the bigger idiots that we've taken a look at least recently, and that's kind of saying something. But he's not straying that far from the standard apologist playbook, is he? Most of them do this, which is why none of them get anywhere useful when addressing atheists, which of course they're not really doing. They get downvoted into oblivion, everybody laughs at them, and they can't understand why they get so much flack. So it's got to be because they're on the right path, right? No, it's because you're an idiot. People are explaining why you're so wrong, but because you refuse to even consider any other options but your own, because all of the explanations of where you go wrong are falling on deaf ears, that eventually turns to ridicule because you're not paying any attention. Because when people laugh at you, especially in the long term, you've earned it. If there are any theists out there in the audience, just look at this guy, because this is why you go so wrong too. You can't just project your own irrationality onto others and pretend that proves everybody else is wrong while you're right, because that's not how this works. Figure it out.
And I'm also going to include some end cards at the end of this video, in case you want some more stuff.
And we're going to ignore them. So, can we get to something of some kind of substance? So far, this has just been this guy making himself look bad, and I have no reason to think that he's going to change that in the future. I'm willing to take a look, of course, because even if we're disappointed, at least the religious fail is sort of entertaining, but that's not really what we're here for. We want a decent presentation of well thought out ideas and an understanding of the actual situation at hand. And that's never what we get, but that's really what we like to see. So, can you take a deep breath and stop being an idiot for a bit, and then get to something of demonstrable substance? Or are we just in for more of the same? Let me know down in the comments what you think, and let's get back to the absurdity.
By the way, let's get back to where we're supposed to be going here. Comprehensiveness. Comprehensiveness asks this question: can this worldview explain the big questions of life?
Atheism still isn't a worldview, so no, but it isn't supposed to. It answers one and only one question, remember? Don't be dumb. But this is where the religious tend to go wrong when placed among many, because they are just projecting onto others and they don't take the time to ask any credible questions. Because they don't care. We've got to be just like they are, right? Atheism has to be another religion, just like theirs, right? It isn't, but why do we think they would care about that? This has been burned into their heads since before they were able to walk, and it doesn't matter how much you try to explain, they just can't get it because they don't want to. Actual understanding would make their cherished beliefs look bad, and they can't have that, can they? Therefore, we're just talking to a brick wall, and what's the point in that? They don't get it, and they don't want to get it. So why bother?
Atheism argues life arose through chemical evolution.
Atheism does nothing at all of the sort. Science does that, but science is not atheism, and atheism is not science. There is no point at all to being proud of your ignorance. Fix it and stop making a fool of yourself. Yet this is really all they can do, right? The theists who don't remain ignorant, they don't tend to stay theists for long, do they? Because reality does not support their emotionally comforting nonsense. That's why more and more theists are just walking away from the faith, because it's getting harder and harder to remain that ignorant in a world where all of the information that we have is at your fingertips. That's why the remaining theists are so desperate to stay ignorant. They don't want you to go out and ask those difficult questions. They don't want you to go find out if what they're saying is right, because they are terrified of the real world.
But life's complexity, especially DNA's coded information, defies naturalistic explanations.
It does nothing at all of the sort. This is what happens when you embrace ignorance and don't actually understand much of anything. Because, as I keep saying, these people are afraid to know stuff. Because the stuff that we know doesn't support their childish wishes and dreams, and that's all they're after. It's hiding under the bed because you don't want to confront the real world on its own terms. This isn't something that you should be proud of. The actual data absolutely supports naturalistic explanations. In fact, it's all that it supports, but they don't want that because the idea of their magical man in the sky watching over them, it just feels so much better. But that's still stupid, though. All of this is.
Notice that DNA is this coded information, and that this complex information must have come from information.
That's the lie that you keep telling yourself because you really want to feel special, even though you're not. This is an emotional problem, not an intellectual one. It isn't coded information, it's chemistry doing what chemistry does, nothing more. Yet, that isn't emotionally comforting enough for the religious, so they just invent crap out of whole cloth because it makes them feel better. But who cares how you feel? We're talking about reality here, not the childish chemical drip that you have going on in your head that you ought to have learned how to deal with by now. This is where things always go sideways with the religious. They're only concerned with what they want, not with what is real. And because what is real interferes with what they want, they pretend that what is real isn't there, so they can just tell themselves comforting stories under the covers so they don't have to deal with the outside world. Does that sound pathetically childish to anyone else? Absolutely, because it is. But that's still exactly what's going on.
Information must have come from information. Well, who is the origin of that information? Well, according to a biblical worldview, it's God.
And according to other religious worldviews, it's their gods. Or according to reality, it's none of the above. So how do we tell which one is actually the case? For rational people, it's the evidence. And that evidence does not support any gods whatsoever. But from a religious view, it's always, my book says a thing. Well, who gives a shit about your book? I mean, who with a brain? because it's obvious that the people who refuse to leave unfettered emotion behind, they're the ones that have all the problems. This always comes down to, here's what I believe, so it's just got to be true. But that doesn't make it true. You have to be able to back it up evidentially, and the religious don't care. They just wish real hard, and that's just dumb.
God is the great master builder with his information, which he encoded into us. Psalms 139 verse 14 declares,
Nope, still don't care about your stupid book. More fast forwarding, I guess. But these are things that you're just asserting, and asserting doesn't mean anything. So clearly, he's not trying to convince any actual atheists of any of this. And mostly, that seems to be all he's got watching his video. He's just trying to pander to the already faithful, and as we all know, that's just dumb. Granted, he doesn't care. He knows which side his bread is buttered on, and he's only after a paycheck, but that's hardly a surprise, is it? This guy is a con man. He might actually believe it, but he knows how to spot a sucker a mile away. That's why he put his video together as he has. Because he, like almost all apologists, is a grifter. Let's not pretend otherwise.
how crazy, why fearfully underestimate? Big question. Is atheism's answer to life's origin sufficient?
Absolutely, if you care about the truth. Is it going to get you to the emotionally comforting happy land that you really want to live in? No, but we're adults and you're not. I don't make up comforting stories in my head to make the outside world look better than it is. It just is what it is. Grow up and deal with it. Yet the religious can't do that, can they? That's a problem for them, but not for us. I embrace reality however it is, however it makes me feel, because that is what it is, not what I desperately want it to be. And it's too bad the religious can't get that through their heads. One might even say it's pathetic.
Without God, atheism offers no ultimate purpose.
Nor does it need to be. Because here again, he's looking for an imaginary father figure in the sky to tell him what to go do with himself, because he's just too dumb to figure it out for himself. This is what he wants to be true, not what demonstrably is. This is where the religious always go wrong. And it's not an intellectual problem, it's an emotional one. These people seriously need to grow up. Let's stop pretending otherwise.
Are we just cosmic accidents? Ecclesiastes chapter 12 verse 13 reminds us.
Still don't care about your stupid books. And yes, we are just like everyone else. We're not special, and neither are you. This is just you people being children, and by your age, you should have gotten over that. But that's all religion is, right? It's an excuse to never grow up. It's an excuse to remain in Never Never Land because you just can't handle dealing with the real world. This is a problem of maturity, not reality, because they are utterly terrified of reality, right? What the hell is wrong with them? Someone please let me know.
Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. Atheism leaves life's deepest question unanswered.
No, it doesn't. You just don't like the answer. However, you liking it doesn't actually mean anything. The answer is what it is. The truth is what it is. Your comfort is entirely irrelevant. The real world out there is whatever it is, and you just have to learn to deal with it. Not cry and whine and kick your feet because you're not getting your way. What you want to be true doesn't matter. Only what is actually true does, and this is absolutely pathetic on your part. Yet he still represents a decent number of people, doesn't he? Now that number of people is rapidly decreasing, luckily, but there are still a bunch of people out there that are every bit as dumb and immature as he is. When will these people grow up? I don't know, but it sure the hell can't be soon enough.
If atheism leaves life's big questions unanswered, what does that mean for its validity? So stay tuned for the practical test.
Seriously, he hasn't been very clear with his tests, has he? I only know where they are because it's marked off on his timeline, but we'll get to his supposed practical test next time. This was positively pathetic. Every bit of it is his own personal, absurd ignorance over atheism, over maturity, and over reality. He doesn't understand any of it. Most theists don't, and they don't want to either. They just really want to believe the comforting lies in their heads because they are not mature enough to care about the actual reality in which they live. That is not something to be proud of. By all the evidence that we have, atheism is the only rationally justified position that one can have. There is no evidence for any gods, thus we should not believe in any. Belief comes after the evidence, and I wouldn't be holding my breath in that regard. Granted, if there was evidence, I would believe whatever that evidence suggested was true. But at the moment, that's not any god, and just watching these shysters day in and day out, just making fools of themselves, that is not convincing me that what they say is true. It only shows that they are really emotionally invested in believing it, and your emotional investment means nothing. Never has, never will. That's something they simply cannot accept, though, and that just makes them morons. What else is new? So, what do you think of these 2 points? He didn't really make it clear what his tests were, but I guess we'll just have to kind of muddle through. Let me know down in the comments if you think he said anything remotely coherent, and we'll meet up back here for the last point and his wrap-up next week. I'd like to say that it's going to be better, but I think we all know better than that. He just can't accept that we're not just like he is. And I'm sorry, we're not. We're better. Being dumb and dishonest is no way to go through life, son. Be better, because it's kind of hard to be worse. Why do the religious keep saying that atheists can't answer their questions or pass their tests when we always can? Because they're not asking us. That's why. In fact, it's almost always the religious that fail. We've seen that so far, and we will see it again today. What the hell is wrong with these people? I don't have the slightest clue. And we're back with the last part of Pastor Ben and his stupid tests that just make him look dumb because he is. The religious are their own worst enemies, and this is no exception. Maybe this explains at least some of the dramatic losses that religion has anywhere that education is a thing. We'll talk about that later on, I'm sure. Now, let's get back to Pastor Ben and his absurd stupidity, because I sense it's only going to get worse from here. Let's get back and see.
Here it comes. The practice test asks this question.
First, though, what do you mean? Because in the last video, he said this was going to be the practical test, and now he's saying it's the practice test. Make up your mind. Now, I'm not going to criticize him if he just misspoke, but this, again, is why people need to watch their own videos before they put them out there and do a take 2 when they make mistakes. I've been seeing a lot of people on religious channels and otherwise who make blatant errors and then just leave them in. They will do a take 2, 3, 4, and 5 and leave all of them in the video. Don't do that. You don't have to be perfect, but you should at least try to be coherent. So, what is this practical or practice test that you speak of? Let's get back and see.
Can this worldview work in real life?
I mean, ignoring the fact that atheism isn't a worldview, but atheism works just fine in real life. I know because I live with it every single day. But what the religious need to understand is that atheism isn't a position on absolutely everything. It's not a religion. It's just the answer to a single question. I don't believe in gods. That's all atheism is. For anything else, whatever I do has nothing at all to do with atheism. And I don't think the religious understand that. I don't think they care. They are looking for all atheists to have the same overriding view, and we don't. The only thing that I have in common with most atheists is that I don't believe in any gods. So the religious are just ridiculously out of touch, and they couldn't care less. And I find that absolutely pathetic.
Atheism, it offers no hope beyond the grave.
But hope is irrelevant. We live in the real world that we live in. People die, learn to deal. The religious can't, which is kind of the problem. That's why they have to make up these emotionally comforting lies that they all just tell each other, because they are in reality just immature children who refuse to grow up. But I really want it to be true. Big deal. Reality is what it is, and you have to learn to deal with it as it is. But they don't want to, and therein lies the irrational divide. It doesn't matter what you want to be true. It matters what actually is true. And the religious, they don't like that very much, do they? Well, too fucking bad for you.
I like this quote, 1 Corinthians 15:19, which states, "If in this life only we have hope in Christ, we are of all men most miserable."
First off, nobody cares about your stupid book. My book says a thing means nothing to the vast majority of people. Secondly, that's not really true, is it? I'm not miserable at all. I don't care that I'm going to die someday, because that's life. That's dealing with reality as it is. I'm just going to make the best of what I have right now, and when someday comes, so be it. The religious waste the only time that they demonstrably have on lies and wishful thinking beyond the grave, which all of the evidence that we have shows it's not real. Nobody gives a crap what you want. Grow the hell up.
Without God, despair often replaces hope. If there's no ultimate judge, why be moral?
Because the consequences of not being moral are here and now. If you go around just killing people, you get to spend the rest of the only life that you can show that you actually have behind bars. Do you want to do that? No. Okay, then don't be a wanker. It doesn't only go for serious crimes, though, because if you're too much of an asshole, people are not going to want to associate with you, and therefore you're going to be alone. We're a social species, so that's not much of a life, is it? I mean, it's like they've never even thought about these questions rationally, isn't it? These people have something seriously wrong with them upstairs. Nobody cares if you like the world that you live in, but you still live here. Learn to deal. You're only harming yourself if you don't.
Even atheists borrow from theistic principles to promote justice and compassion.
No, we don't. Because the religious, they tend to co-opt secular moral systems and then just staple their God in there because most of the things that they believe predate their belief systems. People were not killing each other long before Christianity or even Judaism came along. Yet the religious, they really want to feel special, don't they? That's what most of their theology is based around. It's a combination of ego-stroking and self-loathing, which is why they are so screwed up in the first place. Don't tell me you didn't notice that one, because it's absolutely true.
Which tells me the Bible is superior. Can atheism sustain these ideals?
What ideals? Because if you look at the countries that are most secular, They also happen to be at the very top of the happiness index. They are some of the most financially and culturally healthy countries around, whereas the ones that are the most religious, they tend to be pretty much at the bottom. In fact, let's go take a look at that. The 2024 Happiness Index, and I'll link to it in the description below, the top 5 countries are Finland, Denmark, Iceland, Sweden, and the Netherlands. All of them are extremely secular countries. So let's also look at the bottom 5. Mozambique, Gabon, Ivory Coast, Iran, and Congo. All of those are highly religious countries. That's not to say that religion is the only factor here, because obviously it's not, but this at least suggests that having a secular government and people, that tends to make you a whole lot happier because you get rid of all the religious baggage that makes people miserable. This is what happens when you just go with the facts and leave the childish fifis behind. You actually get to reality. Somebody ought to go tell Benjamin to do that, but I kind of doubt he could handle it because he's an idiot.
Can it really sustain these ideals? Big question, right?
Not really, because these countries have been at the top of the happiness index for a very, very long time, so apparently they can. I went back using Finland since it's at the top of the current list and found that it has been at or near the top of every list for the period of 2000 to 2009, with an average of 7.9 out of 10 reported satisfaction. Now let's go to Congo, which has reported a 3.7 out of 10. There were countries with less, which means Congo has only gotten worse. Burundi reported 2.9 in the early 2000s. Tanzania came in at 2.8. Togo was 2.6, which I think is the lowest on the survey. I don't know for sure, but that's the lowest that I saw. Now, if we go and look at some of the most secular countries like Sweden, their score in the early 2000s was 7.8. Denmark was 8.3. Vietnam, which granted we haven't talked about yet, but they are a very secular country, was 6.1, meaning they've only gotten better over the past 20 years. Now, as I said, religion isn't the only cause of the problem, and secularism isn't the only cause of the successes. But there is a significant correlation there. People need to rent a clue. Religion isn't doing them any good.
And I invite you to answer. What happens when we compare atheism's failures with a worldview that passes all 4 tests?
What failures? I mean, seriously, what failures can you point to? Because again, we have data to examine. The most Christian nation on the planet, if you're going to ignore things like the Vatican, which were not surveyed for the happiness index, but the most Christian nation on the planet that actually does appear is Romania, with 98% Christianity reported. But it's at number 35 on the index with a rating of 6.4. Armenia, which is 97.9% Christian, falls at number 87 with a rating of 5.4. Now, granted, there are a bunch of tiny little islands out there that aren't surveyed, but the next on the list that is Paraguay with 96% Christianity, and they fall at number 54 with a rating of 6.1. So the data does not support what he's saying. A lot of atheist countries are at the top of the scale, and a lot of religious countries are toward the bottom. You have to make of that what you will, but it's clear that this guy has never done any kind of independent research. He's just reporting what he feels, not what he can demonstrate is actually true. Because he's an idiot.
Let's find out. Unlike atheism, the Bible presents a worldview that aligns with reality, it's consistent, it answers life's biggest questions, and works in practice.
You serious?
That is just demonstrably not true. There is nothing in Christianity that actually exists in reality, at least not evidentially so. We've already shown that it doesn't appear to make people happy, and it certainly doesn't make them successful. I could go through the top Christian countries and see how they stack up economically to secular countries, but I trust I don't have to, because we know that's not the case. Romania, the most Christian country on our list, is not an economic powerhouse. The people are miserable and poor, which is why they tend to be religious to begin with, because they've got nothing else and they are desperately clinging to hope. Empty hope to survive. So Benjamin here is just lying, or probably more accurately just ignorant, because he doesn't actually care if any of this is true. Christianity fails every single test, but he's not remotely interested, is he? He just desperately wants to believe.
Let's look at the first test, correspondence, as applied to Christianity, the Bible. The Bible explains the universe's origin, order, and purpose.
Nobody cares what the Bible says. This is just pandering to the delusional. My book says a thing means nothing. I'm looking at actual real-world data, and he's just looking at fifis and faith. This is why they fail, because they just don't care. The Bible is a book of mythology. It's a book of stories told around the campfire. Those stories mean absolutely nothing if they cannot be corroborated to be true outside of your silly book. And of course, he's only concerned with what makes him feel good, not what is actually verifiably true. That's why I'm looking at the demonstrable data, and he's only concerned with, it seems to me, because he doesn't care. What a moron.
Genesis 1:1 says, "In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth." Next thing is consistency. That's the next test.
Wait a minute. You have not justified that what your book says is actually true. My book says it, so it's just gotta be true. That's not how this works. You have to seek out independent, external corroboration backed up by verifiable evidence if you hope to show that your beliefs are true in the first place, and he's not even trying. He doesn't care. This is exactly why the religious are such fucking jokes. It makes me feel good, so it's just gotta be true.
That's not how it works. That's not how any of this works.
God's character is just, loving, and merciful, and provides a coherent foundation for morality and justice.
You are not reading the same Bible that I am. A just, loving, and merciful God doesn't flood the earth and murder everyone. A just, loving, and merciful God doesn't send the overwhelming majority of people to hell. Your God is a douchebag. There is no coherent foundation here whatsoever. There is only wishful thinking and blind faith and delusion and stupidity. And that's not anything you ought to be proud of.
A next test is comprehensiveness. And the Bible answers where we came from?
No, it claims to answer where we came from. But when you look at those claims, they turn out to be entirely indefensible. Claims don't matter. Facts do, and you have no facts. You only have the fables in an ancient book of mythology, and for some weird reason, you seem to be good with that. I'm not. I care what you can prove to be true with objectively verifiable evidence, not what you can claim to be true, and you're not remotely concerned, because you're an idiot. This is why I always say that we're not speaking the same language as the religious. We're speaking proper English, say, and they're just babbling gibberish. And of course, that just made me go and look up Pastor Ben here, wondering if he was a Pentecostal, but nope, he's a Seventh-day Adventist. I think I said that last time and forgot, but yep, he's an SDA. Not that the SDA is any more intelligent, because it's not, but it would have been funny if he had been. At least it would have made the joke work, which now it really doesn't. Anyhow, moving on.
Why we're here? And where we're going.
Still just claims backed up by nothing at all but wishful thinking and fifis. Because I don't know about you, but I actually want to live in the real world, whereas the religious, they want to live anywhere else. I'm not concerned with your feelings. I care only about the facts, where the religious, they have that completely ass backwards. They don't care about the facts. The facts are inconvenient. The facts are scary. The facts don't make them feel good, so they'll just believe a load of nonsensical bullshit because it strokes their egos, and then make videos on YouTube and say all the quiet parts out loud. Granted, he's not making this video for us, even though he calls us out in the title. The religious really need to stop doing that because it never works out well for them in the end. Not that they care or anything, because they're really just not that bright.
John 3:16 offers eternal hope.
No, it makes claims that cannot be validated with independent verifiable evidence. You're the one being scammed, asshole, or you're just scamming others, which I guess is more likely. I'm only concerned with actual truth, not comforting stories, and John 3:16, like the rest of the bullshit in the Bible, means absolutely nothing until you can prove that it's true. So we're going to fast forward through any Bible verses that come along, because only a complete idiot believes this stuff without any kind of independent, evidence-based confirmation. So I guess chipmunk time it is.
Pretty clear to me. God loves you, and he's the creator and redeemer of all.
Now, I know you couldn't see it, but he spent half of the reading saying, "And it's true," because somehow, I guess that just makes it true, right? This is why faith is so worthless. Things aren't true because you like it. They're true because you can demonstrate with objectively verifiable evidence that it is. The religious have no desire whatsoever for that. They just really want to believe. But wanting to believe means nothing. These people are idiots.
Next, and the last test, is practice. Faith in God transforms lives, bringing hope, purpose, and joy even in suffering.
Not demonstrably. Lying to yourself doesn't mean things are getting better. This is why the religious are so full of shit. Remember, the religious tend to be at the lower end of the economic totem pole. Christianity just gives them excuses to explain away their problems. When things are bad, it's Satan's fault or your own sinful nature or whatever. They'll just make shit up. And when things are good, God done it. Their own efforts or the efforts of other human beings means absolutely nothing to them because they are deluded out of their gourds. There is nothing intelligent going on here. When you're down, pray to God and put more money in the collection plate. Because that's always what this is about. Making a buck off the back of the gullible and deluded. This isn't about factual truth. It's about wishes and dreams and screwing people over. What the hell is wrong with these morons?
Atheism fails the tests of correspondence, consistency, comprehensiveness, and practice.
No, I've already shown that it doesn't. You just don't like the reality in which you live. And too bad, because you still live there. You have a vested interest in keeping the gullibly religious in the pews so that you can lie to them and probably to yourself. The only thing that matters is the reality in which you actually live. And you don't have to be happy about it because that doesn't matter. That's what you need to come to grips with. Too bad the religious never can, right? Because they are out of their ever-loving minds.
It's a worldview that doesn't hold up to scrutiny. But the good news is that there is a worldview that does.
And it's not yours. We're really getting to the point that I'm just repeating myself because, hey, of course I am. Every single video that I make is just the same thing verbatim over and over and over again because the religious are like a broken record. They get corrected, they ignore the correction, and they keep saying the same thing over and over and over again.
They just keep saying the same thing. They just keep saying the same thing.
Yes, sir.
They just keep saying the same thing.
Yes, sir.
You cannot have a coherent conversation with these people because they aren't listening, because they don't care. This is one reason why religion is dying, because the religious idiots are lost in the delusions that they have in their heads, and they couldn't care less about the facts. Things are not going to get better for them until they can read the room, and they've got zero interest in that at all. Sad, isn't it?
One rooted in the truth of God's Word, Christianity, and for me, it's Seventh-day Adventism. If you've been questioning, searching, or struggling with what to believe, I invite you to explore the Bible for yourself.
Been there, done that, know it better than you do. I don't remember the last time that I talked to a theist who actually knew anything, and that includes pastors and apologists. They know what they want to know, and they just ignore all the rest, which is why these conversations go so badly for them. They know the comforting verses and the things that they've been taught, but not the stuff that they don't want to pay any attention to, right? I know it all, the good and the bad and the ugly, the encouraging and the disgusting. I know it because I care about the facts, and people like Ben here, they just don't. And that's kind of pathetic, isn't it?
Start with the Gospel of John and see how it answers life's deepest questions.
It doesn't. It might make you feel better, but it's demonstrably wrong. That's the thing. He either doesn't know or he doesn't care if the Bible is actually true. It makes him tingle inside, so it's just got to be real, so there. Do you not see just how childish that is? And I'm willing to bet he doesn't, and doesn't care either. That's why they're not doing well. In 2022 alone, the four conferences of Seventh-day Adventists removed a huge number of supposed members from their books. Since 1965, more than 18 million members have been lost, representing a 42.5% loss rate. Most Adventist churches have less than 100 weekly attendees, and overall, the median attendance in 2023, which is the last year I could find any data on, is just 53 people. I can see why he, who relies on butts and pews, is desperate to attract anyone that he can, because he's going out of business.
And remember, you're not an accident. You were created with love and purpose. God loves you, and he has a purpose for your life.
Because you say so. That doesn't make it true or anything. These are just the beliefs that you're pushing because it benefits you directly. Come on, we can see right through all of this, which is why this guy has gotten roasted on YouTube time and time and time again. It's why the downvotes on this video vastly outnumber the upvotes. It's why he's gotten called out in the comments over and over and over again. Not that he responds at all, because he's just a joke. Come on, this isn't hard to understand at all. He doesn't care about the truth. He's just a complete wanker.
So don't forget to like this video, share this video, and subscribe to Present Truth Today with yours truly, Pastor Ben.
Yeah, pass. Now, we're just going to skip the last 30 seconds of his video because he doesn't have anything of substance to say. Now, that's not much of a surprise because none of them ever do. But this guy, yeah, what an idiot. It's clear that the only people who are watching his videos are atheists who are just out there making fun of him. And I see some of my regulars down there too. For example, Felicia. Hey, great to see you. I think we need to be in the comments of all of these moron apologists, just calling them out. Granted, you actually have to watch some pretty terrible videos, but hey, I do it every single day, and I think I've only lost a couple of IQ points, so I figure you're going to be okay. Stop letting these people preach to the choir. Hit them in the face with the facts, and then make them go into hiding as Benji Boy here is doing. It might not shut them up because, they couldn't care less about the truth, but it will stop their intended audience from being quite as ignorant as they have been. Maybe that'll do some good. I don't know. Let me know what you think of all this down below, and we'll try to find something better for the next video. Sadly, I think we all know that there really isn't anything. I mean, I wish there was. And if you think you have something that's better, post that down below too. Because this is just pathetic. But hey, what can we expect?